got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody. We are family. Yes, I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, sing. Hello people, this is Socrates' son. In this video we will highlight which prominent Muslim apologists praised and celebrated Daniel Haqiqatjou. We will see the views of Daniel Haqiqatjou got these Muslim apologists excited.
Recently, Daniel shared this joke on Twitter. Oh man, I missed the International Day Against Homophobia. The best way to celebrate such a beautiful, momentous, important day is the Muslim way. Recreational base jumping. Daniel Haqiqatjou here is referencing the Islamic punishment to execute gay people by throwing them off a high place and making their punishment a spectacle for people.
Okay, this is one of the most disgusting things of the 21st century. Humanity will remember this for centuries to come and think the lowest place humanity ever been. Taking innocent people just because of their sexuality, because of who they are, because they were born gay, and throwing them out of buildings, a crowd watching for entertainment, and then stoning them. Okay, total insanity, in other words. Daniel Haqiqatjou supports that. Let me repeat that. Daniel Haqiqatjou supports that. He makes an interview with the Apostate prophet where he justifies this act. Now, let's see which prominent Muslim apologists celebrated and praised this interview. Farid. Let's see what Farid said on Twitter. The Haqiqatjou and Apostate prophet debate in a nutshell. Ridvan made a big mistake. What he says here, I just made a little highlight reel of Haqiqatjou with Ridvan. You may have overlooked some of the wild moments during the discussion. This is a Muslim on Twitter who was talking to me, and he said, how's your faith in liberalism after that annihilatory exchange? This is another guy. He says, Apostate prophet Aka Ridvan is against citing studies and backing up claims with evidence. Looks like atheists don't like science when it's used against them. Haqiqatjou proved that slavery still exists in the Western world. Okay, let's see the views of Haqiqatjou about slavery that got this Muslim excited.
Do you believe that slavery is an ideal system? Do you believe that that there should be slaves in a society? Do you think slavery is okay?
Yeah, I mean, slavery is something that I do not find to be immoral. Is there really a fundamental difference between wage labor and slave labor? Is there a difference between owning someone versus renting someone? Renting someone is worse because think about the difference between owning a car and renting a car. When you rent a car, you drive it, in a very abusive kind of way, as opposed to owning it where that's your investment, you care about it. Anyway, so that's something that's uncomfortable for people who are raised in the West. The legal concepts underlying slavery exist within the employer-employee contract of wage labor. In many cultures, there's not really a difference between saying that person A, like Ridvan, owns George. Okay, that's a slave relationship. Ridvan owns George. There's not really a difference between that and saying that George has a contractual obligation to Ridvan.
Okay, you see how Islam made this person's brain a mashed potato. Okay, a total elimination of rationality. Only an evil villain, only a crazy, not even crazy evil villains from comic books say this kind of stuff. But that's not the scary thing. The scary thing is the acceptance and praise he got from the Muslim community. That's the scary thing. Individual crazy people, you can find plenty. You just need to go to a mental institute. But when communities, whole communities, reach this level of moral disintegration, something is going on. And that something is Islam. Islam is a dangerous, evil cult, like communism and Nazism. Simple as that. This is what Adnan Rashid said about this interview. Just saw the challenge of the apostate prophet and commented on his video. He deleted the comment twice. Haqiqatjou decimated the poor clown into oblivion, and he is now trying to save his income by issuing lame challenges. I don't think anyone should waste time with this ignoramus. So, Haqiqatjou, with these arguments, decimated the apostate prophet to oblivion. Really?
Yeah, and so what he does quite effectively is he synthesizes his secular knowledge and with classical Islamic knowledge that he's also acquired through training and to make robust arguments against people who are against Islam and Muslims. And the first thing we need to probably talk about, because it's quite hot now in terms of social media, is your debate with this the apostate Rizwan, which went quite viral and was quite a destruction, even by the admission of some of his fans. And this debate really was a mismatch of tremendous proportions.
Okay, let's see some other views of this guy. This is his views about offensive jihad.
Did Islam spread by the sword? Yes. But the point is that yes, Islam spread by military conquest, and jihad is not only defensive, it can be offensive as well. But isn't this completely immoral? Isn't this completely barbaric and contrary to religious freedom? Let me ask you a question. Do you agree with the Geneva Conventions? Do you accept the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Do you accept the idea that international bodies have the right to enforce certain standards of justice across the entire globe?
Okay, here Haqiqatjou says that he can enforce Sharia with offensive jihad the same way the United Nations can enforce human rights. This is what this guy just said. That he can enforce Sharia with offensive jihad the same way the UN can enforce human rights. Okay, we are talking now that his mind is a mashed potato. Islam destroyed his cognitive faculties. He hasn't got any scales. Okay, and this is how we have Muslim terrorists. Exactly, this is the effect. Islamic doctrines making people insane. But that impressed Mansour. Look what he wrote on Twitter. Is jihad only defensive? Did Islam spread by the sword? Daniel Haqiqatjou with an unapologetic answer. Mansour advocates this video. The video that says that you can enforce Sharia with offensive jihad the same way the UN is enforcing human rights.
As for your question, honestly, I'm not sure why. I think he made a mistake in what he did was he made a video attacking me and my stance on certain issues. And it was unprovoked because I haven't really spoken anything.
Unprovoked. You didn't make provocative comments about executing gays, for example. It was unprovoked.
About him, but he thought I was an easy target. So he made a video mocking me and all of this.
Let's make something absolutely clear. You are not just an easy target. The only thing I'm doing to refute you is saying loud what you believe. That's the only thing I need to do to refute you. And I told you on Twitter, I said, the only thing I will do to refute you is to say loud, to put in the screen what you believe. And you are refuted. It's like fishing with a dynamite. Okay, I can be silent and you are refuted. That's how easy target you are. It's not even about you. Now I'm humiliating the people who had the audacity to praise you. Like this idiot. Okay? That is the deal with this video. Adnan Rashid almost apologized, knowing you. I said to him, "So you align with the views of Haqiqatjou? Are you sure about that? Nice to know." "No, I don't align with all the views of anyone. I agree where I need to and I disagree where I have to. I agree with all of Islam and my view on Islam is in my public lectures. I do agree with many that Apostate did really bad in the discussion with Daniel." What he did really bad. The only thing he didn't do is grab the opportunity and completely annihilate this idiot. But that's human. In a 4 hours video, when you listen to this kind of magnitude stupidity, you get overwhelmed. You stumble. When a guy cannot even accept the basic logic, basic morality, you don't know from where to begin. You need to go to absolutes, to go to the beginning of the universe and why we exist. This kind of questions. You need to go back to absolutes to be able to refute him. But that doesn't mean Daniel won the interview. No, that means that he stumbled the opponent with his stupidity. His arguments were so outrageous that went under the radar of common human intellect. Let's say you talk with a Green River serial killer and he starts saying, "I like to murder people because I want to sustain their souls in the moment for eternity." What you will answer? You will stumble. That doesn't mean that he made a good argument.
And this is what I think a mistake, because you usually shouldn't provoke or challenge someone directly. You're not ready to actually live up to it. So I just, as soon as I saw that, I said, okay, fine. You want to have a Q&A? No problem. Let's do it. Just name the time and place. I think he wasn't expecting me. I think in his own mind, his criticisms of Islam or his mockery of Islam would kind of make any Muslim cower and not want to be in the hot seat against him. So I think he had some of this false confidence, and that was his mistake.
What was really apparent in that discussion was that he was really and truly well out of his league. He was dealing with someone that was basically his teacher for all intents and purposes, someone who you were educating him and making it seem as if there was some kind of equality in that kind of interaction.
Okay, let's continue with the views of Haqiqatjou that apparently Mohammed Hijab agrees with.
Spoke, but if it was discovered that you've apostatized, you'd have you'd be detained. You'd have 3 days to change your mind and to say, "Look, I reconsidered." And if you didn't do that, then it would be capital punishment.
Who's getting harmed there now? Like, when we're talking about a harm.
All of society would get harmed.
Because of
you're advertising, you're speaking about leaving the religion, and that threatens everyone's afterlife, because other people might see that and hear about that and be affected by that. You're planning to broadcast your shows in the Middle East and in Muslim countries, so you're threatening the afterlife and the happiness, the ultimate happiness of millions of people with that
Daniel,
act. The state, I'm just applying your secular definition, Ali, of maximizing happiness, okay? So if we want to maximize happiness of the most amount of people, we have to have severe consequences for apostasy.
And this is how dogma works and brings evil to this world. Steven Weinberg said, "With or without religion, there will be good people that do good and evil people that do evil. But for good people to do evil, that takes religion." This is how dogma works. All evil maniacs in human history, Haqiqatjou, thought they were doing good. Hitler thought only the Aryan race will remain and this will be good for the human race. A serial killer might think killing little girls He keeps their soul, and that makes his heart more beautiful. Communists kill 40 million people in a time of peace to bring the communist utopia. The more noble is the idea of the dogma, the more atrocities you do to get there. And that's how we had ISIS. Okay, this is the mindset. Whoever sees this video and still thinks that it's USA that made ISIS and not this madness, what can I say? Okay, you are totally blind. Okay, this is the illness that creates ISIS. This mental disease we call radical Islam. And it is literally a mental disease. See Daniel Dennett, Dangerous Memes. In this video, he describes how toxic ideas, toxic memes, hijack our mind and make us act contrary to our biological fitness.
I want to repeat one thing that I said before. Remember, Putin also thinks he had free and fair elections, and so do we in Canada. Just because both of them said it doesn't mean so maximizing happiness. Just because two people are claiming,
No,
it
you
doesn't
just
mean
have a different view of what happiness is.
Let me defend.
You're wrong.
It's not like
Yes, but there is objectivity, you idiot. The chance of the Quran being true is zero. Okay. So there is objectivity. But because you might think that you can get away with sophistry, this is Socrates' son. So let me give you the equation, the mathematical equation, why your logic fails. Reasonable to believe equals level of claim plus level of conviction this claim demands divided by the evidence. Let's see if you are reasonable to believe in your stupid cult. What is the claim you are making? Supernatural, a miracle. So extremely high level of claim. What is the level of conviction you demand? Total submission of all aspects of life in a seemingly immoral cult that you will enforce that on the pain of death. Okay? Extremely high level of conviction you demand. And now what is your evidence? He went alone in a cave, comets and demons missile. Eh? There is no contradictions in the Quran. That is your evidence to justify that level of claim and that level of conviction. No, you are not reasonable, and we only make politics with reason. Not because your mother is from Iran. We will not make the world a Nazi dictatorship because your mother happened to be from Iran. Okay, Daniel Haqiqatjou. Oh, this guy really gets in my nerves.
Let me defend the guy.
I just had the same. I said the same exact argument that you gave.
No, Ali.
Maximizing liberty and happiness in society.
Do you have evidence that your political ideology maximizes liberty and happiness to societies? You have this kind of evidence. You have evidence that theocratic totalitarian dictatorships that do not respect basic human rights and freedoms create prosperous societies. You have this kind of evidence. Maybe you mean the ISIS caliphate. What is this evidence? In this world, my friend, the only way a society based on Islam can be prosperous is to happen to be born on top of a treasure. Places like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, if they didn't happen to be born on top of a treasure, they would have been Syria. That is the evidence we have in this world. Everywhere Islam infects politically a society, it becomes Syria. Maximize liberty and happiness to society with an ISIS caliphate.
Where am I wrong? Where did I miss?
No, okay. So if here's the thing, I'm gonna play by your games. Okay, so Ali, his point is that if you're talking about eternal, if there is an afterlife, and me and you are threatening people's eternal happiness, of course, whatever we could do to stop you and me from robbing people from eternal bliss, anything we could do to stop that should be done, right? So
In the interview with the Apostate prophet, Haqiqatjou unconsciously agreed we should only make policies based on reason. Therefore, agreed for the separation of church and state and accepted the objectivity of secular morality. His argument is that Islam makes more sense, practically, in comparison to secular politics in relation to what? To human well-being.
Fortunately, I was in a situation where in the philosophy department, I could explore, well, how do I resolve this conflict? Which one is right? Is it Islam or these modern common sense? And I found out after, through undergrad and then graduate school, that actually what I thought was common sense was actually a very particular philosophy, Western philosophy, originating within the 18th and 19th century. British, French, and some German thinkers, their very particular philosophy about morality and the world, that had become the common sense of the modern world, that I was suffering from that kind of bias and that kind of indoctrination. So I found out and explored and realized that that philosophy is fundamentally incoherent.
Incoherent. Okay, you just accepted secular morality, you just accepted the separation of church and state, and you just accepted that we should only make policies based on reason. Now, in contradiction to this, you want us to add the Islamic afterlife in the equation of how we make better societies. I name this logical fallacy the X logical fallacy. I just invented that, a new logical fallacy. It's called the X logical fallacy. We should only make policies based on fairly demonstrable stuff. In philosophy, we can engage with everything, but as it comes to policies, to practical things, we should only make policies based on fairly demonstrable stuff. Why is that? Because the X factor can turn every scale. For example, let's say I murder somebody with a very savage way. But now new information comes from the X factor that in a secret dimension, the guy I just killed was in fact a savage dictator in some other galaxy, that he was responsible for the death of 20 million of his people. Okay, the X factor can turn every scale. That's why we only consider fairly demonstrable stuff to define policies.
That's what his argument is. And if there's a heaven,
really, no. I didn't limit it to just the afterlife, even the happiness in this life.
But in college, so I started learning more and more about Islam, and my initial understanding of these kinds of cliches about Islam. Islam is a religion of peace. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a feminist. Islam is about tolerance and so forth. All of these things started to come in conflict with what I was learning about Islam. The history of Islam, I was getting more into the prophetic biography, the history of the companions, some of the more advanced texts within Islamic jurisprudence or fiqh.
Here Haqiqatjou agrees with Robert Spencer when he says Islam is not a religion of peace, Islam is not tolerant, Islam is against women's rights, Islam spread by the sword, and it inspires to enslave the world. My question to Muslim apologists, how come with one breath you condemn Robert Spencer, people like Robert Spencer and David Wood, and with the same breath you praise Haqiqatjou when they both say the same things?
But what's your advice on dealing with people like this? I mean, some people say let's employ maybe a more civilized approach, a more calm approach. But it seems like you went straight for the jugular with him and taught him a lesson straight away. So what do you say to people who advocate this kind of compassionate approach to enemies of Islam like this?
So I'd like to get your views on that personally, mashallah. But my perspective is that practical advice, whenever confronting atheists, they have this false sense of security because they feel that they're always on the attack, critiquing religion, and religion has to be on the defensive, and believers have to be on the defensive to justify belief in God or religious morality and so forth. But I think, practically should turn the tables on them.
That's a new trend in Islamic apologetics the last months. They unapologetically pull down their trousers. The plan is simple. If we admit everything, they will stop bothering us. Okay, to conclude, all the negativity against Islam and Muslims is because certain Muslims prefer to not compromise literal Islamic doctrine in the slightest to coexist. Okay, the pathology is internal in Islam. It's not external. Islamophobia comes from people like Haqiqatjou and his supporters who sacrifice human well-being for doctrine. Robert Spencer is not an Islamophobe. He just says the truth about Islam. The truth you just admitted. So, next time any Muslim apologist breaks your balls about Islamophobia, you will remind him. Wait, wasn't you that you agreed with Haqiqatjou in the interview with the Apostate prophet? Weren't you family? We are family. Weren't you family?